Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Beers and Bites with my co-host Chris Jordan and our special guest Scott Moore. Today, we're going to be talking about all kinds of interesting things with our interesting guest. So before we get into that, let's start by showing off what we brought to drink today. Scott, since you're our guest, we'll let you go first.
Okay, I'm probably going to be the lamest guest you've ever had on this show because I'm not really a beer drinker and I'm not really an alcohol drinker. However, I did something special. I went and found what I think is supposed to be the best non-alcoholic beer, which is Guinness and Samuel Adams, to try to make a non-alcoholic black and tan. And I don't know if I was able to do that, but there's a good story behind this though. But go ahead and show yours off.
No. Let's hear the story first.
Okay, so when I
wonder how bad that tastes.
It's not bad. But before I was of age in the United States to drink this stuff, I was probably 18 or 19 years old. I was finding this stuff in the store called Kingsbury. You may have remembered that. It was a non-alcoholic. It was terrible. And I got sent to where I went to a Bible college during that time. And I started getting the Kingsbury and bringing it to the dorm to make it look like I was drinking beer because I like to poke the bear that way. That was just me. I'm that guy. And I got all the other guys in the dorm getting this stuff. And we're buying it by the casefuls. Nobody's getting, buzzed at all at this college. It's exactly opposite of normal college years. However, we kept all the cans. And they put all the cans in my room, and we started stacking all these cans all the way around the dorm room, and everything was fine until the vice president of the school had to do a routine check with the maintenance crew about some air conditioning problem. And my room happened to be one of those ones. He walks in, and there's this string of all these cans that look like beer cans in there, which was against the policy of the Bible college, as you can imagine. The next day, there was a memo that came out, and it was because of me. And so that's my legendary change of policy story.
That's awesome.
All right, where's the black and tan? Did you have it in glass already?
Yeah, but I don't think it melded very well.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about.
Black than tan.
Yeah, I was worried that the density wouldn't, because the black and tan only works because of the density of the beers.
Actually, it's not bad. So.
Interesting. Do you not drink any alcohol at all, or you just?
No, I just don't. No, and I'm also I've been trying to lose a lot of weight over the last year, so that doesn't help when you have alcohol.
I was about to say, did you ever notice that maybe it's because you're not drinking alcohol? Maybe have you tried just drinking a beer a day and seeing if you lose weight?
No. I've actually lost about 54 pounds.
Damn.
So I was a lot bigger boy, and you can actually go, if you go back on my podcast, you can go back and you'll see I shrink over time. So it's good.
Okay, we should get to the business part of this, but do I show? So mine's Norse. It's yet another Fasten beer. I keep on going back to my little shack over here to the guy sells it, and he's like, yeah, the distributor has to stop doing it because the checks are bouncing. So now I'm like, oh my God, we were talking about what are we going to do if we can't get the beers anymore. So, well, I'll let you know how that one goes. We'll see if the distributor starts paying the checks. Wow. All right, Jeremy.
Well, wait a minute. What is your beer though?
With the Fasten, it's a double IPA.
Double IPA. Nice.
Yeah, I'm drinking for two.
Nice.
Scott and I. Yeah, it's. Yeah, it's a sweet. It's the Fasten, the Festa one was the one that was the award-winning one. But I like this one better. But they're both excellent. They make great beers overall. But it's hard to find. So you have to know what shacks to go to find it. All right, what you got, Jeremy? Yeah.
Well, today I'm drinking a Lagunitas Tiki Fusion Zombie, which is a cocktail-inspired IPA. Let's see. There we go.
I thought Zoom was trying to edit you out.
It's a nice 10%er, so we're gonna get a slight little bit of action going there. It'll mix in well with the tequila I had for lunch, and supposedly has notes of orange, lime, grapefruit, and allspice. So we'll see how it tastes like.
The concept of allspice in a beer is pretty sickening.
It's weird. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
And
welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
Definitely get that grapefruit note right off the top. That's good. So, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, sir?
Well, Scott Moore, I've been in IT about 30 some years. Started out as just a Unix person and a support center, worked my way into somehow Nashville, Tennessee, working for one of the big five, Deloitte and Touche. And then from there, started picking up performance testing, load testing. And the only reason I did that was somebody told me that I couldn't do it. It pissed me off. I said I can, and I made a career out of it. So 25 years later, I have a big mouth as well. So I'm always doing blogs and speaking and trying to share all my knowledge. So I became known as that guy, the load tester guy. So I had a site called loadtester.com. Years later, started my own company called Load Tester. So you can kind of guess there's a theme here. But also, just playing a role in QA and testing, whether that's functional performance, and then actually seeing the security piece come into play later on, and watching the security folks kind of go from Wild West, the way QA used to be and software development used to be, kind of coming into their own over the past several years. It's been exciting. So that's been my whole area of expertise. And more recently, a couple of years ago, I decided that I wanted to start making content. And it started off with a around the United States tour of about 30 days, where I drove from where I live in Florida to Las Vegas and back 2 different ways. I stopped in almost every state because I know so many people now, and I would just interview them. And about the time that I got back from all of this interviewing and footage, I had about 17 episodes of a show. And when I got home is when COVID locked down everything for us. And so I had all this material and I just released it through COVID. And that show was called The Performance Tour. And during that time, I somehow switched over from doing consulting, technical consulting, to being a content creator and creating sometimes really funny and stupid videos. And that's where I'm at today.
Well, that sounds fun. How many states did you hit on your way through?
I think it was like 15 different ones. And I actually stayed in Denver about 2 weeks and kind of did a little consulting in there. That kind of made it a little longer. But I mean, I talked to thought leaders, but I also talked to people who were doing this day to day, who were in Fortune 500 companies. They were telling me what worked and what didn't. So we kind of got a format going around that, where it was an interview, but we also wanted to do something a little different, where we kind of made it not only just educational, but interesting, entertaining, right? So then we started thinking of other things. How can we make it even more entertaining, where we know that the geeks will watch this stuff, but will their bosses watch it? Will the people who are in sales watch it? Or will everybody watch this? Will my dad watch it? Right. And so I just started getting crazier and crazier with this stuff. And so eventually we started releasing separate videos from the episodes, and we would do things like music parodies, like think Weird Al Yankovic, but in the tech world. So we would take these videos, like this shirt I've got on it looks like an Iron Maiden shirt. It's actually Rock and Roll Ribs, which is a barbecue place owned by the drummer of Iron Maiden. And so we did an episode where we went down to his place and I interviewed the person. Then we got to talk to the drummer of Iron Maiden. And so then we did an Iron Maiden parody video, and it kind of blossomed from there. And the video quality is pretty good. I mean, we've got people that normally do like music videos and documentaries and stuff. So we try to bring the quality of the show up as much as we can, and that's all part of what I'm trying to do. So
unlike our show, which has zero quality, but it's mildly entertaining.
It's the content. It's all about the content.
So Scott, you're changing patterns right now. So you're about to start a brand new podcast. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. And it gets into the security realm, which I hope that you'll be interested in. It's, this past year, I started talking to a company called Saltwork Security, and the president, Dennis Hurst, he liked what I was doing with the performance side of the house. And he said, have you ever thought about doing this in the security side? Because if you think about it, in his realm, he does penetration testing, scans, static testing, dynamic scans, things like that. So he's using those products, and they have a product of their own that takes all that penetration testing information and tries to make sense of it and visualize it, helps you prioritize your vulnerabilities and things like that. So if you think about that work, it's just a mirror image of somebody who's doing functional testing, but they're just doing exploratory testing, right? Functional testing, you want to make sure that the software does what it's supposed to do and it doesn't do what it's not supposed to do. But on the security side, it's like, we're just going to feed it some stuff and just, you never thought about things you never thought about. We're going to find out if it'll do some stuff. It's just, to me, it's an extension of that. Right. So the same process, and so it rings a bell with me. And some of the same technologies that are used to do a security scan with proxies and things like that is the same thing that we use when we do a performance test. We create a script using a proxy to capture the traffic, and then we replay it. We make sure that it looks like a real user. We're trying to fool the web server, for example, into thinking that it's a real user so we can get to the database to make a round trip there with different information, different data. It looks like it's 500 different people at a time, whereas we've got different goals for performance, but it's the same stuff. So I thought about that. I said, well, I can do something with you. So he said, fine, let's go to DEF CON. Let's go to Black Hat and let's talk to some people and let's do some interviews like you did with your other show. That was a very interesting experience, which I can tell you all about it, but that's a different crowd. That's not the testing crowd. I'll put it that way. And Black Hat and DEF CON are totally different crowds as well. So after we did the interviews, Dennis said, I want my own show, man. I want this to be a show. I don't want this to be a one-time thing. So we started putting our heads together. He came up with the name. I want to call it the Security Champions. And the show was born. And we have been doing, I've got 2 episodes out right now. We're about to release the 3rd one in December. So it's once a month. And this is just sort of a test market to see. And so far, it's really taken off. We're seeing a lot of good results, and a lot of people are talking about it on LinkedIn as well. So the show has its own intro, its own thing, its own website, branding, everything. And we're really excited about what's going to happen next year. We've already got companies that Saltworks works with. They've got about 8 partners. That includes like Probly and Synopsys. We've talked to CrowdStrike. We've been talking to several different, and it ranges from all areas of security. And they're like, there's nothing like this where you're taking security and you're trying to make almost like an entertaining television show out of it. I don't know of anything out there either. So that's what I'm doing right now is the Security Champions.
Sweet.
It sounds fun. It sounds like you've kind of stolen the beers and bites concept, but dropped the beers and added in actual
content
editing and content. Yes. Yeah. Put a little more production effort into the show. That's great. I look forward to it.
Everybody hits DEF CON. I think one of the things interesting around DEF CON is years ago, I was talking to DT, Jeff Moss, and I said, DT, like, why the hell do you put in Vegas in the middle of the summer? And DEF CON used to be a BBS. And when they were shutting it down, they decided I have a party. And so they were trying to decide where to meet the party. And it was up to DT, and DT loved war games. And so the first city that gets nuked in war games is Las Vegas. So that's why they actually have DEF CON in Las Vegas, is because DT likes war games. So it's kind of a weird, listen, there's so many weird facts about DEF CON, mostly about the goons, but there are some weird facts about everything else around DEF CON that it's a great get together. It kind of morphed. I don't remember that Cisco release issue and all the lawsuits, and it changed everything. It changed it where Black Hat became really corporate. And DEF CON lost its zing because nobody wanted to release vulnerabilities because people were paying for them. So why would I speak at DEF CON and release a vulnerability if I can get paid a lot of money for it? Why would I teach people how to make vulnerabilities if I'm getting paid for them? So it kind of, it's very rare to see exploits. I was at a B-Sides last week, 2 weeks ago, and they actually did exploitation. And I thought, wow, that is literally the first time I've seen it in maybe 20 years. Yeah. So anyway, long story. I know it's really this, Scott, it's about you, but when you bring up DEF CON, I think DEF CON is a very interesting cornerstone. You think about like, what's that television show with the aliens and X-Files? And X-Files, when they brought up the hackers, they brought up DEF CON in Vegas. Mm-hmm. So anyways, so you're doing these things on security, Scott, and here I am just remembering the old days. Obviously, the new days are a little bit different. So where did you started by looking at who they do business with, but what are you learning as you begin to engage the security industry as opposed to hanging around those nice performance geeks?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hung around with the security folks as well, and I know enough to protect myself and keep myself out of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how I know enough that I could ruin some other people that don't know as much as I do. But I'm not at that. I still feel like I'm an outsider to the really, like, the people that are really in the know, like the people that are just doing stuff in memory that you never see and that kind of stuff. That's a little bit beyond me. But the thing that I'm learning is that the security is so wide in scope, right? So it's it's social engineering, it's lock picking, it's the find the flag stuff that people have to come up with. It's not just can I do SQL injection, right? And there's so many skill sets that are involved. You can pick one area, just database security, or you could pick just security observability, and that's a whole career now. And I don't think people realize how wide that realm is. So there's an endless supply of topics and an endless supply of thoughts around this, and some of these areas in security are just so new, and you're coming up with all these new attack vectors all the time. I don't know how one person can ever learn it all, and so I'm excited about it, honestly. One thing I see.
I'm just laughing. I'm thinking to myself, they do have the CISSPs. They seem to know it all. They get tested.
Well, yeah, but here's the other trend in the industry. You've got this whole move in DevOps and DevSecOps about the whole site reliability engineer thing. And this is a soapbox I stand on all the time. We have gotten away from specialization, where we say, no, you're an SRE. You're supposed to know everything about how to automate everything. You're supposed to be a great tester. So you're a developer, you're a tester. You're supposed to be a performance expert and a security expert. And now that started here, 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, it started. And now just in the last year or two, we're starting to hear about cognitive overload for the SREs. They can't stand it because they're working 80 hours a week. They're on call all the time. They're always in some kind of a war room, which shouldn't even be part of DevOps. And they're wondering why. It's because we're expecting so much. Do more with less. Do more with less. Well, we've done so much less with less that we don't get anymore, right? And that's the problem that I see. And I think security is one of those things where you need specialization. You need specialization in the cloud. You need specialization for database. You need specialization for network. And you just can't expect anybody to know it all.
It's interesting that you think the SRE role is part of DevOps as opposed to Cloud Ops. I wouldn't expect a site reliability engineer to have all those same skill sets. As a person who formerly worked for AWS, the SRE role was very much a cloud break fix, kind of like your new sysadmin role within the cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are
you seeing that trend changing?
Oh, absolutely. Just like when we first heard what Agile was supposed to be, and then what it actually we saw in the wild, right? We had these people get together and create a manifesto. It took that first company 3 years to become fully Agile, and the whole company had to get behind it. And there was all these areas added. But no, we put this together. Oh, we're going to be Agile next week. And what we got was just fragile. We got not Agile. We got Waterfall faster and worse than we had it before. And I think the same thing happened with an SRE. It started out being, we're the find it and fix it people, and we want to reduce the toil that's in our company, and we're going to try to make automation the solution for that. And because we're moving to cloud, and because we're now on cloud, we should have the capabilities to do that and automate wherever you can. But now we've got the hybrids. We've got companies that are moving now back from the cloud. It's called repatriation. That's a big thing right now, and they're saving lots of money by doing it. But those people that they fired because they went to the cloud, they're not there anymore. And these people don't have those skill sets they had when they were on-prem. So we've created this thing where all SREs got to do all that too now. That's a problem.
Didn't even think about that.
Yeah. The talent gap and their skills shortage. It's interesting. You hear that those statistics, right? Whether it's on the news, the real, like the cable news networks, you see it in like the various trade rags that we watch, blogs and things like that. Yet you have all these massive companies laying off tons and tons of IT workers. Where are the jobs, right?
Right.
You have 10,000 people applying for a job. Why?
They're all working for OpenAI, or they will be soon.
Microsoft, you mean?
Yeah, right.
Looks like they put Altman back in as the CEO, so they unfired him. That's an interesting.
I'm curious what his severance package was from Microsoft for the long weekend he spent.
Oh, 5 days.
There got to be a lot of zeros in that.
I like just a percentage of that. That's all.
Just 1%.
So Scott, I want to talk about multimedia with you for a bit, but not right now. I think one of the things that as you talk is you're talking about the testing and stuff, but one thing I always feel about security is that we're crappy about being on the edge. To tell you the truth, we have a lot of people who write scripts and really don't know what they're doing because we have too many people who don't know what they're doing who get paid. Mm-hmm. But I feel like technology somehow gets better somewhere else. Like you take like Snowflake gets into ours, or the other companies wind up moving into our industry because their technology is just damn better, right? Mm-hmm. And so what are you seeing outside the security industry where when you start talking to people in the industry, you say, what the fuck? You guys don't know how to what? Is there a technology that you're seeing outside of security that you think the security people just don't get?
That's a good question. I don't see it more as a technology. I see it more as process, right? I see there's this wild, wild west mentality of how do I organize all this stuff that I'm trying to do when I'm trying to run penetration testing or I'm trying to run these scans. How do I know what I've found? Like you said, they've hired so many people who knew how to spell security. Okay, sit in here. You'll learn on the job, learn on somebody else's dime, because we just need all this work to be done. But how do you organize that and come up with something that's recreatable so it can scale? Not talking about performance scaling, but scaling people in a department. That's been the significant issue. And I don't know that a technology solves that. And it's about knowing context, and it's about getting it from the time you're in school till the time you're out in the job market. I mean, where do you go in college now to learn this skill?
Well, there's a whole master's and PhD program with most large or colleges that focus solely on cybersecurity.
Yeah, okay.
But you could go down.
How new is that?
You're right. It's within the last 10 years.
Yeah, as new as the industry is, so to speak.
But you talked about, Scott, you already talked about how wide our industry is, and you're not going to be able to teach it in 4 years because we base ourselves on the basics of computer science, right? So I get your point. I mean, I'll tell you that the number one, you kind of hit the nail on the head as far as my opinion goes, which is that the biggest issue we have in our industry is that people are tested in a lab. First of all, they have very little lab knowledge, but what they don't comprehend is scale. And I mean by that, until you waste $20,000 because you're stupid enough to run something overnight in AWS, you don't know what scale is, right? Because you haven't paid the price for doing something wrong from a scalability issue. And I do feel like I agree with you that there are processes missing, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the person spent so much time trying to learn confidentiality and availability, integrity, that they never knew how to do scale testing. Like how do you scale or any testing whatsoever? You brought up some testing, and to tell you the truth, I don't know many people who really know proper Git processes that are in security. They spend so much time wanting to learn how to pop a box that they never learned how to use Git. But God, I'm just in a bad mood today, Jeremy.
Yeah. Now, I've got a good friend who is in this realm. That's what he does for a living, is what you're just talking about. And he said something to me. You guys can verify this. He said, think about the people at DEF CON. Think about the people who would be wanting to be in security. Some of these have an anarchist mentality. They don't want to just pop the box. They want anarchy. And there's levels of that, right? There's levels of extremism to that. When that happens, there's this kind of rejection of process right out of the gate, right? They have a process, but it's not necessarily documented or can be scaled. And I think that might have something to do with it. Does that ring true to you?
Jeremy, I mean, you listen to Elon Musk's book, and there's this, hey, throw away all requirements, challenge every requirement. I mean, that's most of the people I know in our industry who are good at hacking, right? Which is, by the way, just a small section of what security is. They're really good at reading between the lines of what the manual is saying. And they're realizing that, wait a second, it's trusting that you're going to take the next step the obvious way, right? So their brains are wired to say, hey, the unobvious way. But those are rare people. I think, but there is an attitude. There's a lot of, what would you call it, Jeremy? Piss matches a lot of times where people, there's a lot of egos.
Yes.
You should really be scared of the quiet guys more than anything else in security. Not the guy who's going to tell you how good they are, but the guy who just listens and says, you know what, I'm just going to break it. I don't have the time to argue with an idiot. I'm just going to break it. But yeah, I think that's an interesting part. But if you go back to your part you said about processes and stuff like that, I do think that's a weakness of our industry. So I do have multimedia questions. So Jeremy, do you want to go ask more security questions?
Well, I wanted to kind of echo your sentiment there, right? Yeah. Because the quiet guy in the room, he's the guy who's got the flipper zero, right? He's the guy who's already popped your iPhone. He's pulling down your contact list. He's not saying much in the right. He's not saying much in the meeting, but everybody kind of will defer to that person, right? When it comes to something technical or something specific, right? So, I agree. There are a lot of egos in this industry, and the most vocal and sometimes the most flamboyant, so to speak, people are kind of the least skilled. They're very good at talking and not necessarily very good at actually, attacking or defending, right? And before we pivot over, just to bring and SANS is not yet, hint hint, a sponsor for the Beers and Bites podcast. But SANS, if I was going to tell myself, hey,
you're talking the System Administration and Network Security Conference?
No.
SANS?
SANS, as in SANS.org, the SANS Technology Institute. SANS is a educational organization that has a number of certifications that are specific to the cybersecurity industry.
I think we're talking the same one. You're talking like the GIAC training and everything, right?
Yeah, GIAC.
Okay.
I mean, so you can know what the definition of SANS is. Big deal. See? But the point about education, they offer full undergrad, graduate degrees using their certifications as the classes. So if I was going to try to go from zero to hero, high school student to a security professional, I wouldn't necessarily go to a traditional college. Me personally, I would go down that SANS route, and because it's all hands-on technical training. It's not theoretical. It's not someone's opinion that's rooted in 1970s technology, right? It's all up to date, hands-on labs and stuff.
I think that's a great point. I mean, I think that the difference is like SANS is to CISSP is B-sides is to Black Hat. I think you're looking at a lot more grassroots, more hands-on. Even their original testing was mostly around knowing the current, knowledge of what's going on in our industry. It wasn't necessarily a validation of structure or models. Man, we can't get a boring certification person on one time. We could really just have a whiskey run and talk certs. So SANS, that's an interesting part, by the way, Scott. You might want to take a look at that group. That's a different type of. It's a different pace. I think that Wild West Hacking Fest, which I know is a B-sides, but Wild West Hacking Fest, there's a good number of really interesting conferences around the United States. I think SANS are fairly interesting considering what they're doing.
The fact that you have that, you're already light years ahead of the performance community. And that's one thing I will give credit where credit is due. The security community came together And with the whole CISO role and the certs and OWASP and some of the things that have come together for the security movement, if the performance community had been that together and been right on point, we would have the same thing. And maybe we wouldn't be seeing websites going down this Black Friday again in 2023 the way we do every single year, because they still haven't figured the thing freaking out.
Make sure you enable your auto scaling groups, people.
Yeah, auto scaling is going to solve everything.
What was your favorite performance tool? So when I started my career,
that's a loaded question. I'm going to get in trouble.
When I started my career, I was a network engineer, right? So I was Ixia and SmartBits. So I was using those for performance analysis. When I went and got a little bit deeper, when I was over at Intel, for example, I used a product called the Flamethrower from a company called Antera. I'm not sure if they're around anymore or not. What was your tool du jour?
Well, I started, doing this in 1999, 1998. And back then, Mercury Interactive was the king of the castle when it came to load testing, especially enterprise applications. And it's mainly because they had all of the protocols that everybody was using. It wasn't just web, it was everything. And of course, they became one of the top 5 companies out there at the time until they became the poster child for stock options problems, and then had to rapidly sell to somebody, and then HP snagged them. I followed that so closely because that was what I did. That was everything I did. So LoadRunner was the tool. Yep. Now LoadRunner's still around. LoadRunner's still doing great. And it's still for the enterprise. They got a not performance center, LoadRunner Enterprise now. And they've been purchased like 3 times. It was HP, and then it became Micro Focus. OpenText purchased them for $6 billion, I think, this past year. Wow. I still follow those guys, and they've been a sponsor of my podcast before. Wow. So they're still doing great. The other product that I use a lot, my other sponsor, Tricentis, they make a tool called Neoload. And Neoload started out being just another one of those, it's basically web and web protocols, but they've since branched out where they can do old SAP GUI and SAP implementations. And SAP actually picked them up as part of what they actually resell. I think they're a great tool. They have Citrix, so they have a lot of legacy stuff because that stuff isn't going away in the enterprise. So I like those 2 tools. I'm not so much a fan of the open source stuff. And everybody knows that, because on a weekly basis on LinkedIn, you will see a meme of me making fun of JMeter every week. And I do it just because there's no CEO that can get pissed at me and sue me, right? But I, as a consultant, I got so frustrated with, I only have this certain amount of time when I'm at this company to do this work. And if I've got to put together a Rube Goldberg machine made of all these little tiny things to make it all work, knowing that anything could go wrong, and I've got the support of a community forum, maybe, or some people, and maybe some are more robust than others, but I couldn't risk that going over a date.
Sure.
So I had to use a commercial product where I could get support and I could get it done, and that's why I'm a fan of that. So those are the main 2.
But not every small company wants to use their entire funding allotment just to get Mercury licensing.
Well, that used to be the case, but there are actually ways that you can get it for a reasonable price, and you can start off with a free version too. So there's ways to do it. You just have to be smart about it. Some people think, oh, we've got an application where we might have 10,000 people, 10,000 users total. So we need to load test a 10,000 user. You don't need a 10,000 user license. Concurrently, maybe only 300 people are going to be on that site. You need to test for that. And you know what? You don't even need that. You'll start finding patterns. And I'm sure this is the same way with security. You'll start finding patterns way before you need that full license. So you can find it here. And then when you start working out all the kinks and you need to find out if it scales to that big bang, you can get it temporarily for then. Just the license, you can get it for a day, 30 days, whatever. And just most people don't understand how that works.
Has much changed in the performance testing space in the last 30 years?
Immensely. Yes. I mean, we have to deal with all the new stuff that comes out, right? If there's another, because it's all protocol based, right? And so if you've got gRPC, you got to have support for that, or anything that's new down the pike, there has to be some level of support, and you have to make it look the same way in the tool, right? I don't want to have to learn a whole new scripting language or a whole new GUI just because you came out with a new protocol.
Yeah.
The thing that made it really difficult when Web 2.0 and the rich clients you've got, like, it's not just HTTP calls anymore. We have to bring up this whole page, and there's client-side JavaScript that has to load. And so if I just did an HTTP request, I get that first response back. Okay, that's, half a second, but the whole page takes 5 seconds to load because of all that front end stuff they did, right? So we had to switch over to browser-based testing, and we had to mix that. So we used the HTTP calls to load the back end in the database and make the servers work hard. And then we would use a browser-based thing, so it would load up the entire browser and start, finding out how long does it take this object before it's there, or how long does it actually take before my login is actually fully rendered. So you can look at the difference. So we've got it up into the amount of load we want. Now we know exactly how long it's really taken from a real user's perspective. Now that browser-based testing is a lot more expensive in terms of, like, it takes more memory and more CPU per virtual user to do that. So you're going to use more servers creating a load than you would just you're running 10,000 on one machine. But it's worth it because you get more accurate results.
Scott, what I'm hearing is that you would be an excellent denial of service system. Like, kids around the United States would pay you serious money to take out the school system on test days. Just to let you know, you probably can make a lot more money than performance work.
We've always said that a load test is nothing more than a denial of service that's just been ramped down. And most of the time we create the same effect as a denial of service. So we've kind of known that. There was an incident in Miami-Dade County over COVID when kids were working at home. This kid spent $100 on a credit card and took down the Miami-Dade school system for like 2 or 3 days. And they caught him.
There's all that, Texas, no Texas, it's paid to denial of service. And these kids are paying Chinese companies to take out the local. We were talking down in Texas one time, and the school guy's like, "You got to save me from the DDoSs." It's like every time there's a test, it used to be the fire alarm. Now they just denial of service all the servers. So,
and this whole thing about bot traffic, right? That's a big deal right now. Wouldn't it be great if we could look and know of all the IP addresses and the ranges from the AWS, the Google Cloud, and we had that in some kind of a system that said as soon as we start seeing swarms from these IP addresses, we just knock them off right then, or we never allow them in. I know that is a problem that I can't say the name of the company, but if I said them, everybody would know who they were. They have to shut their store down, their online store down, when they make a major announcement, and then they reopen the store back up. They don't just launch it back up, because if they just open the store back up, the bot traffic would swarm them, purchase everything in the store, and then resell everything on the black market.
Sounds like Ticketmaster and Taylor Swift tickets.
That's another one. Yeah. And there's lawsuits coming out of that now.
Oh yeah. Huge.
And I called it. And there is this word on the street from some people that said that was a planned activity. I don't think that was a planned activity. I think it was just stupidity myself. They've had ample opportunity. And I know that myself, my colleague, James Pulley, who I'm always riding around with, and everybody knows us as the load testing guys, we've personally contacted Ticketmaster several times and said, we can help you scale. We can help you solve this problem. We'll pull out all the stops. We'll bring the Avengers in of performance people. They won't talk to us. And because of that, James has a show, which I got to plug. He does it every year on Black Friday. It's called News of the Damned. And he highlights every story of every site that goes down during Black Friday. And we have had some and concert tickets are at the top of the list of stuff going down. But it's denial of service is really what it is. So that's why I say I'm kind of familiar with the technology, because you get the same effect.
It's interesting that you can take these performance testing tools, you can turn them into evil, right? You can turn them into a bot cloud that is going to register 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 Ticketmaster entity or identities, and then queue and consume all the tickets. Yeah,
and it's you can do it rather cheaply now than you used to. I'm always amazed at Cloudflare and how they're able to thwart huge botnets and things. And then they come out and detail exactly how they did it and what they had to do. That's an amazing story. A couple of stories I've read from them.
Yeah, they had amazing downtime last week for about 2.5 days, though. That was pretty significant.
That's the first time I've heard of that, though. I don't know if they went down. How many times have they gone down like that?
You can hear and there.
And I'm sure they get attacked every day.
You know what? Part of their infrastructure, they're the first real major infrastructure change to IPv6. And that does help with certain types of issues, but obviously not enough. Anyways, we would talk hockey, but he doesn't like hockey either, Jeremy.
Horrible.
I just don't know enough about it, man. If you want to talk about 80s heavy metal, I've got
that's okay.
There's never been the trivia answer.
Listen, you're down in Florida. There's never been a good Florida team whatsoever.
There you go.
I would disagree. I would say the Tampa Bay Lightning have won 2 cups in a row. They're on their way to win 3.
Jeremy, that was sarcasm, Jeremy.
Oh, okay. As I said,
I have been to about 5 Predators games when I lived in Nashville, and I loved it because I always stayed in the area where they had the buffet, so I was always eating while.
I just remember that the Thrashers, when the Thrashers are down there, oh my God, that was terrible. They would cheer when there was an icing, thinking that was a good thing.
Wasn't that Atlanta?
Was it Atlanta?
Yeah,
maybe it was Atlanta. Yeah. I just remember the Thrashers, they got sued because they took over the name of a skateboard company.
Yeah, it was a magazine, actually. Thrasher.
It was a magazine? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's where we need help on this show is your knowledge of multimedia. So one of the things when I was talking to you, you've done a really good job of getting an excellent following around your organization or your podcast. You're starting a new one. You'll probably have more subscribers than we do within the next 2 weeks, if not already. So what do you do? What was your mentality about how do you establish a podcast, especially in an industry that you're just a fanboy of? You know what I'm saying? I mean, how do you go about that business wise? You got to still put food on the table. What's your business plan of establishing a podcast? If there's any secret sauce, you can skip it, but I'm very curious.
Let me just clarify something. Now, I do have a weekly podcast, and it's the audio version and the video version. So YouTube, I just have a video version of my podcast, and then it goes out to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all those places. But I don't get near as much interest and traffic on that show as I do these other, I call them video series. I don't call them a podcast because there's no audio version of them out there. This is not something people would listen to. I want these to be television shows. I mean, I want to be Peter Jackson. I want to create Lord of the Rings of tech shows. And that's my goal. And you just have to have a lot of money for good cameras and good, I want to put together television shows for tech people. But you remember Tech TV came out and you had Leo and all those people. I don't want to do that. I want to do something that was like the Seinfeld version of that, right? And I find that if you interject some kind of humor, parody, or something like that, you usually can hook people, even if they don't care about the topic. And that is what has worked for me. Now, I don't get into anything past PG or PG-13. I'm not going to go there because it's business, right? But I've always said people do not want the stodgy IBM corporate collar button tie stuff. They don't want that anymore. They want something that's authentic, realistic, and sometimes, funny. If we can get halfway between the stuffy corporate stuff and an Alice Cooper concert, I think if you find that halfway point or that balance, you win. And that's kind of what I'm looking for.
Interesting. So you still feel that. So here's the next question really is around business and engaging people. So a lot of people feel like, I'm just going to throw content out there and content is just good enough. But it seems that you believe that there has to be a level of engagement in that content that's keeps a person there, right? I mean, so how do you go about figuring out how do you generate that content? Do you plan this out, or is it just like I was just being silly one morning and I just wrote it down?
The funny ideas come from out of the blue. And normally, because I drive everywhere that I go, I'm not afraid to fly. I just love to drive. When I get windshield time, that's when I get my ideas. If you put me on a riding lawnmower in a huge field, I'll come out with 4 or 5 different really great ideas, just because I want to do something that I don't have to think about anything else, right? Just a monotonous thing. And that's what the driving does for me. And that's why all my shows are around travel and going somewhere and interviewing people when I go there. And at first, when I did it, the interviews were just, hey, I just know this guy and I know what his specialty is. So we'll talk about that and we'll take a rabbit trail if we need to. But now what we're doing is that worked for a little bit, but I don't think it gives you the biggest audience. Mm-hmm. You have to sit down and say, if I were wanting to watch this show, what would I want to get out of it? What would I take back with me? Would I take back something that I can almost feel like I've held something in my hands or that I'm going to use? And if I'm not going to spend much time watching it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to do, is think about how can we provide the most value out of this show where they're going to remember it. They're going to remember the educational piece of it, but they might get hooked because of something really stupid. I don't know what this guy's talking about here about Kubernetes, but he's fixing to jump off a building. So I'm going to watch the rest of this, program. I think there's a lot to that. And I will say this, I've had to change my mind about a lot of stuff, because what I think is the most stupid crap I've ever seen, that's who's getting all the hits and all the plays and stuff on YouTube. There's a channel where this girl takes a bread that's unbaked, right? It's like it's the flour and the water and all that stuff, right? And she takes it and puts it in a pan and puts her face in it. She makes a mold of her face, and then she puts it in the oven, and it comes out different every time. She has a channel. I think she bought a house off of that.
Well, yeah, so, people are monetizing really. What I'd say maybe our generation and age of folks don't really understand or appreciate the way that my 20 and my teenagers and my 20-year-old kids really appreciate more, right? I think there's that we, as I guess we can say it, we're creators, right? Mm-hmm. We need to get out of our heads and kind of align with what is acceptable now, right? Mm-hmm. And whether or not we think it's stupid, it's kind of irrelevant, because it's not about us. It's about the person receiving the message that we're trying to spread. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
But if you're going towards businesses, though, and we're all in the business realm here, you still have to, there's this level of professionalism that is expected, but we can come at it at a different angle. They still want to be entertained, but they want to be entertained differently than maybe, a Mr. Beast video, but it needs to still have some kind of a hook into it. And to me, humor is the best way to do that.
Sure. Did you ever watch that comedians in cars getting coffee thing with Seinfeld?
That's what inspired a lot of the stuff I did on the first season. I drove, obviously, from Florida to Vegas. When I hit Dallas, my buddy James Pulley, who I just mentioned, he flew in. And he got in the truck with me, and we put GoPros, and there was like 4 episodes where we're just driving and talking about a different subject. And it was based on that show. Learned a lot about trying to get out wind noise and tire noise out of your your video from those days. And that wasn't always successful, but you learn.
Hackers in cars drinking Red Bull. That's our new show.
And for me, I'm well known for being the guy who loves barbecue. Like, I am a barbecue fanatic nut, and everybody knows that. So what we would do is, at the end of every episode, we would go eat at a barbecue place, and we would rate the barbecue, and we would take pictures of it and all that stuff. So if you watch any of my episodes, there's going to be some barbecue in there, and we'll recommend a place or whatever. So we kind of turned it into this, what you said, the Seinfeld driving, with diners, drive-ins, and dives, and a little bit of education. And then all of a sudden, Scott's going to be singing an Iron Maiden song at the end. Now, how the Google and YouTube algorithm figures out where to place that, I have no clue.
So back to you mentioned this slightly a few minutes ago. I would have to say Anthrax, Sabbath, AC/DC. Those were my 80s heavy metal.
Well, you can't go wrong with those.
AC/DC's heavy metal?
No, it's not heavy metal. Metallica is heavy metal. They should be on the list. Maiden, of course, should be on the list. Slayer.
The answer is always Slayer.
The answer is always Slayer.
So where would Poison fit?
in a jar on the shelf. No
You would
offense,
get
Bret
beat up at a
Michaels.
Slayer concert if you
Yes.
mentioned Poison.
Yeah, there's a difference between 80s hair metal
Yeah.
and 80s actual metal.
Okay, so
Right.
so Steel Panther. I think it's Steel Panther. Is that the
Steel Panther is a parody of
Yeah.
80s metal and glam metal. They're a parody of that. However, the guitar player for that band is amazing.
I was gonna say they're
Absolutely
for real.
amazing.
They're for real. We're not talking like bronies. I mean, they're for real. They're pretty damn
They
good.
can actually play. They're
Yeah.
just they've got the niche that they have, which is not safe for work.
So when
Okay.
I was in LA. So I'm in LA. I don't think that's a secret. And Metallica came to town, and we saw the concert at SoFi. And as I was excited because this was my first Metallica concert ever, and I've been a Metallica fan since they came about, right? And never had the opportunity to go to one. Went to it. I was completely disappointed in the sound.
Oh, the sound was
It
terrible.
was the worst sound ever.
They just covered Metallica during the Virginia Tech halftime because, of course, we do Enter the Sandman for every show or for every game. But they did like the greatest hits of Metallica for the band for all the songs. So that was very impressive. It didn't have the same sound as Metallica for some reason, but
There's a phenomena going on. I don't know if it's something that Metallica's like doing themselves, or if it's just that the band leaders across all these different colleges have done. But they're doing a Metallica band off right now.
oh, really?
Yeah,
We should win that. I mean,
it's
what's
pretty
funny
interesting.
is I can't remember a Virginia Tech game without Enter the Sandman. I mean, I cannot. I mean, I don't know how many years we've been doing it since the 90s. So it's, anyways, we digress.
I was gonna say worst 80s metal band, Warrant.
Okay, I can give you that.
The only thing about Warrant that I liked was the video, for obvious reasons.
Yeah. I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
Cherry Pie. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of bad metal during those years, I will admit.
Are you a Ghost fan?
Not so much a Ghost fan.
That's an interesting one you bring up because, see, I would have considered Ghost in the punk realm.
Ghost? No. Punk is fast, right? A lot of driving, repetitious kind of music, where Ghost is more melodic metal.
Okay.
We went to Metallica Sunday night, and then a week later we went to Ghost. And the sound, the production, obviously the venue was different. It was a little bit smaller. We weren't at SoFi, we were at the Forum. Still a good sized venue, and the sound there was amazing. I think the mix at the SoFi Arena is hard to do because of its sheer size.
Yeah, the acoustics have a lot to do with that, and some rooms just weren't made for that kind of stuff, you know. Being that I was in Nashville for a long time, and I'm in audio. I mean, you can tell. I mean, I play, and I
was going to say, Scott, where's
the audio?
You're going to have to work on an intro for us.
I can help you with that. And I got a lot of friends in Nashville that were in that industry, and I can tell you, there's a whole science to the whole music thing. And I've hung out. I actually am good friends with the guy who mixed Master of Puppets, Michael Wagner. He also did Skid Row. He did a lot of the 80s metal that you listen to. And I can tell you the talent in his ears to be able to hear what he hears and does what he does. It's phenomenal. He's retired now, but I have watched him do some things that I did not know was even possible with audio. And it's an interesting deal.
So, to kind of wrap it up for me, because you bring up this audio and having an ear for it, how did you remove tire noise from, like, are you a Final Cut Pro kind of guy? What are you using to clean up your sound?
Well, originally there are plugins. I will take the audio and I'll move it into a product called Cubase, and there's Logic, there's Pro Tools, there's whatever. And then there are all these different EQs and effects that you can use to basically take out just the frequencies that cause that rumble noise at a certain level. And you can take out a single frequency if that's what's causing the problem. You can do that. You can also use things called gates, where if the noise level when you're talking is this level, and then just the hiss is this level, you can cut it off when it hits that level. So and so you can get very surgical around that. I'm actually working now with a product called it's a video tool called DaVinci Resolve. And a lot of the guys who have been using the Adobe products are now switching over to this because you can get a free version of this and it gives you 90% of everything for free. And if you buy the thing, it's only $300 one time and you never have to buy it again. So I went ahead and bought the full version. They have an audio section in this with the same type of plugins that you would get in a professional audio workstation. And they have a button that just says vocal isolation. You press it, it isolates your vocal. And I did a video with this just 2 weeks ago. I was standing next to a busy street where you could hear the trucks and everything going past me. Vocal isolation, no noise, can hear me crystal clear.
And which one was that again? DaVinci or?
DaVinci Resolve. It's getting very popular, and they have used DaVinci Resolve on, especially for color correction thing in major motion pictures. The later Star Wars movies and a lot of the new stuff is all done with DaVinci Resolve. It's a great product.
So that's a video too, then obviously.
Oh, it's made for video, and they have an editing section, a color correction section, an audio section, and then you can render it out however you want.
Yeah. And so when we met at PepLink, and one of the things you showed me was the Pocket 3. So that's the video. So what is your video using? You're using the Pocket 3, obviously you like
that's the newest one. And I got that 7 minutes after it was offered on the DJI site because I had the Pocket 2. The Pocket 3 is, I think, a game changer because I think it's going to challenge a lot of the bigger Sony cameras that people are using for vlogging. Mm-hmm. It definitely is not going to do what a $6,000 camera would do, but the person that's on the street that doesn't want a large gimbal and they don't want to make these big cages and stuff around their cameras, this literally will fit in your pocket. And I actually have one sitting here right next to me. Let me bring it. And you can get this thing called the Creators Pack. It's $600, and you get this remote wireless mic with it. You get all these other features with it. But this is the size of it. So this is my hand, and this is the size of the camera. And you turn on that screen and the camera is here. This is the same camera that they put on the drones at DJI. Yeah. And this particular camera is a 1-inch sensor. And if you know anything about the size of the sensor, is the bigger it is, the better, especially for dark places. Like if you don't have a lot of light and you're only dealing with natural light, this will pick up a lot better in those darker spaces. And it will pick up 4K video up to 120 frames, which means you could do slow motion, but and to have that in this type of a footprint is amazing. Number one, the sound quality is amazing. I can't brag on it enough. So I've got 2 of these, and I do interviews where one's focused on one person, one on another, and then I'll have a camera in the back that's getting all through. So I have a 3-camera solution, and I can fit both of these guys, one in one pocket, one in the other. I can go anywhere. When we do the really high-end music videos and things like that, I actually go to Nashville, and the guy who I use to edit my videos, he has access to those really expensive Sony cameras that they make cinema stuff with, and that's why it looks so good.
Excellent. So hopefully we'll get up to your standard. Yep.
So I think what he's saying is we have subpar tech.
So I've jumped up to the Brio, and I've done the Mevo's 3-camera solution, but this is like levels way above us, Jeremy.
Now, the camera that I'm using for what you're seeing now is actually a Sony camera, and it's a Sony camera and a lens, and I think it was like a $600 camera, but it's got really good image quality, and I don't use it as a recording video camera. I just use it for the streaming, and that's all it's used for. It never goes, it stays in the same spot everywhere. I don't travel with it.
You are very clear.
Yeah, you got great color. You've been obviously working out. There we go.
Another thing has to do with the lighting, right? So that's something that I am terrible at, is lighting. Yeah. So I had to get the guys who do the work for me, who understand lighting. I do a FaceTime, and I'm like, here's my room. Here's where do I put the lights? How loud, how do I get them? And they kind of talk me through that stuff. And I'm still learning about that, but that's extremely important. You can have a subpar camera, really good lighting, and you can get really good results. Not so much the other way around.
Yeah. Well, we've got a lot to do, Scott. So you're going to have to supervise us and help us out a little bit. Yeah.
I'll only charge you twice as much as I charge everybody else.
That's completely fair. I think maybe 3x that. And
I feel the same way, Scott. As long as you pick up the tab for Thanksgiving, we're good.
Okay. There you go. Do you want me to give you the model of this camera that I'm using right now?
The Apollo yeah, sure. I mean,
it's a Sony ZV-E10. And I think they might have a newer model now because I bought it 2 years ago, but I'm pretty sure that was $700 when I bought it.
Well, we appreciate it, Scott. I mean, we will ask you a bunch of questions. I'm sorry we meandered all over the place, but you're a fascinating person. I mean, you have a lot of different. You really are. You got a lot of.
I got to tell you, I've been looking at your product at Fluent Security, and I want to get a demo really soon because I'm excited about what I'm seeing, and I've got some ideas I want to run past you because I think you got something here.
Well, thank you. You know, actually, Jeremy's a user of that product, and he's actually got the beta. I shouldn't call it beta now; it's GA available. The platform, it's kicking ass. But the issues we have is that. You know, we don't want to. We'll have to talk about this some other time. There's focus of product, and it's a great product. It's a question of meeting the right people and being true to the product as far as being true to all the things it can do. Our industry is changing a lot. You know, I asked you early on about where you see tech. I think the security industry has a lot of people know how to do things, but they're not disciplined in creating new innovations. They really don't have the same scientific approach to testing. I mean, you're seeing it when you talk about what performance people do. Security would never have done anything if we waited for that much perfection before we release things. I mean, we're a very aggressive. This is a very aggressive industry of script kiddies, to tell you the truth.
Right.
And when you're producing hardcore product, and to tell you the truth, that's where I think the change in our industry is about to occur, is that we're seeing better coders and better techniques than we've ever had before in this industry. It's becoming significantly competitive in a commodity way. They look at what happened to Elastic. It's been crushed because it just didn't have the capability that's, you know, like Snowflake has or some of these other high-end databases. And even then, I think the database is not as important. And I think as more and more engineers come out, they realize, man, why am I even talking to a database? So anyways, I'm just off.
No, I think you got
I
some
need
good
to,
points there.
I'm gonna have to reload on my think juice.
But it's exciting at the same time.
It is. This is a great industry. I love my industry. It's the reason why I'm not retired. And I welcome you to it. If you don't think if you're not in it yet, I welcome you in it. I'm really excited. I mean, this is our third year doing this podcast, and I think we meet so many interesting people, and I don't think we've had one guest that's anything like a previous guest. Right? I mean, everybody we talk to is pretty different.
Very much so. Yeah, which I like the variety. We're supposed to be a security podcast, and so most of the time we don't really talk about security the way we should.
Right.
Well, we do.
We talk about whatever tech is interesting with our guests that they focus on.
Hence the cameras and video. I really wanted to talk about early on, to tell you the truth, because I think the quality. I watched a lot of your videos, Scott. The quality you have, the diversity you have. I'm like, man, this guy really knows what he's doing. And
I appreciate that.
All right.
Well, let's circle back to the 80s metal because
Okay.
I thought we were finishing up, but we go back to 80s metal.
No, let's go back to 80s metal. I just threw out some numbers or some band names. I'm curious to hear your top 5.
Oh, why are you going to do this? Because I got all these friends in Nashville, and they're going to be mad if I don't say the name of their band.
Obviously, number one, because I'm looking in the background, is Devo.
No.
Devo is number one.
No, that was another one of our skits.
They just released a vodka. I shouldn't say. I think they released it last year, called Trust Me, and you can buy it for $350 online. But okay, if it's not Devo, oh man, you got me stumped.
Well, some of the bands wouldn't be necessarily metal. I mean, if you're going to talk metal, you got to be in the Metallica range, right? So yeah, Metallica was a big when they first came out, right? I heard them right after Kill 'Em All. Right. So I was there from the beginning. By the time the Black Album hit, we were like, oh, only posers like Metallica. That's old news. Right. So I was there from the beginning, but they were really, really good. If you're talking about borderline, the whole AC/DC, Van Halen, I don't know that we'll ever see that ever again. And that level of, I don't know, whatever that they had. AC/DC, really, if you think about it, they only have one song. And they just repeat it with every song that they have. But it's a really good song.
That's harsh.
That's the
harsh.
thing.
It's
a great song.
Was that one? Was it Thunderclap or something? Everybody says that's the one. Thunderstruck. And every asset. And to me, it's Dirty Deeds.
Yeah,
I love.
Well, I have to say, the Back in Black is one of the top albums that will ever be.
Yeah, great riff.
The quality of the production on that still stands today. You can listen to it; it still sounds fresh. And I have really good monitors and sound system in here. I mean, I have the pro level studio stuff, and I can hear stuff in there that most people will never hear, and it is amazing what they did with that. So I have to give them credit for that. Obviously, Ozzy and Black Sabbath are in there. Iron Maiden. I'm all about all those bands. A new wave of heavy metal. I like anything that's got really, really fast guitar. I don't know if people remember this. There was a band called Racer X, and they had Paul Gilbert and the Shredder guys. I know that Chris hates the Shredder, but I'm a guitar player.
I do, but you bring up Racer X, and again, punk. Like they're
80s like hair metal, but on steroids.
Speed metal ish.
I know.
Terrified. There was a band called. I got to give them a plug. There's a band called Impellitteri. Okay, it's a long name, but it had a guy in it named Rob Rock. And Rob Rock is one of the most well-known power metal singers in the world. And the Chris Impellitteri, one of the fastest guitar players in the world. So they're along that same line. I released a song back in 2012. This is another interesting story if you want to hear it. I released a song in 2012, and my good friend Michael Wagner, who I just mentioned before about the Metallica stuff, he helped me get that done. And he did most of the work. In fact, I did the guitars, I did the bass. And it was a song called Obsession. And he asked me, because I just said, Michael, I want to create something that sounds like what you would have done in the 80s, like that metal stuff. I want something that sounds that good. He says, well, we can do it. He liked the song that I'd written. And then he said, who do you want to sing it? And I said, well, when I wrote it, I was in high school when I wrote the song. I said, I was thinking about Rob Rock and the band he was in with Tommy Aldridge and the Mars Project and all that. He said, well, let's call him. I know him. He produced one of their albums. I didn't know it. And he hands me the phone. He's like, talk to Rob. I'm like, so we asked Rob right on the phone, would he be willing to sing this song? He's like, well, if Michael Wagner's going to do it, I'm in. So literally a few weeks later, he flies up to Nashville on a Friday night. We're eating at Longhorn, talking about the song, wakes up the next morning. By noon the next day, he's flying back home. He's done. I mean, it was like 3 takes. It was over. And I released that song, and it's one of the best songs I've ever done. And it sounds like that 80s metal that Chris hates.
Well, because I mean, you're touching, like, you're not talking Angry Samoans or Black Flag or
Black Flag.
You're not hitting the big bands of the 80s yet.
Dio, anything Ronnie James Dio.
That's right. Yeah.
What
Dio,
about Exodus? Bonded by Blood was one of my favorite records when I was growing up. It's crazy thrash metal.
Oh yeah.
I think it's where Kirk Hammett came from, right?
I think so. Yeah, he was from Exodus before then. Yep. And of course, Anthrax Among the Living was a really good album at the time. So I like the headbanging stuff. I kind of graduated out of that a little bit now. But I like any kind of music. If it's well played and well produced, if it sounds good, if it's got good quality, I love it.
How about what are your thoughts on King Diamond?
I can't do that. I just can't get into those vocals.
Yeah.
Too what's this? Too melodramatic or something for me. Well, there's some stuff that I've heard that probably nobody else has heard because I was in Nashville. I got to hear a lot of stuff that never got released by record labels, and there's some stuff that's really good out there that nobody knows about.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, Frog Leap Studios, I think it's in Norway or Sweden, and they'll take like regular average Joe top 40 music and they cover it as heavy metal.
Ooh.
And the speed guitar that these guys do is so silly in the fact that they enjoy doing it like this. So anyways, I'll send you that. You guys will you'll readjust and you'll say, you know what, that Taylor Swift song isn't so bad when played as heavy metal.
When it's at 120 beats.
Yeah, that's about the only way I would say that.
So anyways, so that's
question for you. King's X. You ever heard of King's X?
Oh yeah.
I love them. Galactic Cowboys. That's another band that was on the same label as them. Let me think if there's any more that I might want to mention. Dream Theater. I was a fan of Dream Theater when they first came out, for sure.
Isn't that
but
Mike,
it's because I like the technical stuff, you know.
Their drummer is pretty amazing, Mike from Dream Theater.
Symphony X is another one along that lines. And I remember when that first Symphony X thing came out, I was just like, I can't believe these guys are doing this. I just love the technical stuff.
You know, it's funny that none of us actually mentioned GNR.
Oh, look at me. I'm not the heavy metal guy. I mean, my head's thinking about Primus right now.
Primus, one of the best concerts I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh God, that double bass drumming is incredible. I mean, I have to say that for three pieces, they're amazing.
Yeah.
They're a lot like Rush, right? Actually, I think if you've talked to Claypool, Rush, was one of his.
There you go. Three-piece bands. Rush. That's another three-piece. Presidents of the United States, another three-piece band. Three-piece bands are amazing.
Yeah. I saw Primus at the Greek.
Yeah.
He had a setup where he had a giant bass set up on this weird stand, and he was playing it like an upright bass. And it sounded amazing. And he's I don't remember what song, maybe it was Too Many Puppies or something like that. And he's using this, not a true upright bass, but playing a bass guitar like that. He had a 3-neck bass guitar.
See, we should do a whole series on three-piece bands, because I like Violent Femmes, another three-piece band where he's playing the barbecue kettle. It's great band. I mean, anyways, we can have some fun with the three-piece band thing.
That was fun. So let me get my link in there before we get the end of the show. If anybody wants to check out something about security, the website is called thesecuritychampions.com. One thing, thesecuritychampions.com, and you can check it out there and see if you like it.
I'm gonna be like the Justin Timberlake character in Social Network. Drop the.
Right.
Now it's a $1 billion idea.
I tried to do securitychampions.com. Obviously, it was taken.
Just as just an update on my beer, because
mine's gone.
There is beer in the name of this show. If you're not a fruit forward person, I wouldn't recommend the Tiki Fusion from Lagunitas. It's if you want that hoppy IPA beer flavor, you're not going to get it from this. But if you're looking for something a little bit fruity, very citrus forward, that's going to kick you in the head because it's 10%, definitely try the Lagunitas. It's definitely.
You didn't really sell that one. You know what? What's interesting about this one here, because it's citrus and mosaic are both hops that I'm very much used to, but they have this one called Amarillo. I've never used it. It's pretty solid combo. So I really have to say that the more I become an alcoholic, the more I appreciate the hops combos that the beers are using. You're very disappointed lately on fruits. I think Mango Cart, you might as well just drink some Kool-Aid and then have a beer. There's some really just too fruity beers out there to be called a beer. Well, Scott, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys have been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on board. I'm really excited to see your podcast and to hopefully see some movie videos or music videos on security. Yeah.
I would like to, at some point, if you're going to write songs about cybersecurity, I think we should collaborate. I think that'd be fun.
I would love to. I have some ideas that will run past you. The closest thing we did this past year was the song Wonderwall that everybody knows from Oasis. We did Firewall instead, and it's out there. We redid that whole video, and it's out there on the parodies list on my YouTube channel. So
I'd like you to do a cover of Fat Bottom Girls, if you could make it a security song. I have no clue what it would be, but I think that it just has the right rhythm for security. Anyways, I lose it. I've only had one freaking beer, and was just one beer. It's not good.
What's wrong with you, man?
I only had a salad today. You know what? I find that giving blood and only eating a salad really makes drinking beer that much more effective.
Much more efficient. Got it.
Oh my goodness, you guys are a trip.
Well, with that, folks, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to season 3, episode 2 with our special guest, Scott Moore. Remember, save money, donate blood, eat a salad, then drink your beer.
Amen.
Peace.